Welcome to Bloom in Full Color. As you can see, Jennifer is not here today, and I'm going to say that she's on assignment. Okay?
Jennifer who?
Yeah, exactly.
So to my far left, we have Adam.
Yeah. Hi.
And right here to my left, we also have PJ. And today we're going to talk about 2024 spring gardening goals. So that should be a fun topic.
Yeah. Where do we start?
Well, I think the start is right. One of the best quotes I ever saw was gardening starts in December when you start getting the catalogs,
Yeah.
right? Gardening doesn't start in February when you're actually out in the garden. It starts right now when you start looking at stuff and start planning what you want to plant. Following on to your last episode.
Yeah, you must have listened to our last episode. That was
right. Those of us who do this for a living, right? This is stuff that you really got to have together well before January because certain things have to be started so early. So yeah, gardening for next year starts December, January when you start getting the catalogs from the seed suppliers back east and or Moss's catalog with all of our cool new offerings coming out next spring. But that's when gardening truly starts, is when you start planning for your next season.
I agree.
Absolutely.
Planning goes a long ways.
Let's take a shot in the dark here, Dave. What are your gardening goals this year?
My gardening goals, a little bit differently because I'm transitioning out of the traditional gardening type scenarios, and I'm going more towards hydroponics. Okay.
Yeah.
So where I've worked with lettuces and spinach and kale, I want to get into strawberries. I want to get into cucumbers, building those trellises, and some of the herbs like, we can do mints, we can do thyme. So some of those things in a hydroponic type setting.
Have you seen the rain gutter strawberry setups?
I have.
Right, for hydroponics, right?
Yeah.
Pretty cool little setup, relatively inexpensive
So
too.
basically what I'm going to be doing is right now it's not a rain gutter, but it's PVC pipe that's got holes, and then we put in the tubes into it. When I get established, I'm going to have pallet rack and then the floating tables.
Nice.
So
you're indoors now and you're transferring to outdoors?
No. This is all
indoor.
still be indoor.
All indoors.
All indoor.
Exclusively.
So everything that's where I'm starting is indoor with the hydroponics. Now, I will also do a cut garden. So this will be in South Carolina. I'll be doing farmers markets and things
Slightly
like that.
different
So,
climate
yeah,
than
just
here
a little
in
bit
Southern
different.
Idaho.
Yeah.
Slightly different.
Slightly.
But this is my planning that I'm doing now. So it's going to be a little bit different than what we're talking about for Southern Idaho.
Sure. But are you, you're cut flowers, is that what you said?
Uh-huh.
So yeah, let's take it there. Do you have a seed calendar, a germination schedule? What are you looking at?
I'm looking right now at the catalogs, trying and
variety
a little bit of
stage.
research. So it's going
Gotcha.
to be sunflowers. Okay,
Right.
for sure. There's going to be some dahlias, some cut dahlias, and there will dianthus and carnations. Okay. What I'd be growing. But I've got to look at varieties because I want them tall. I want to be able to take those stems to make the bouquets and things.
Yeah.
So
Are
that's the research.
Are you planning just farmers market sales, or
Uh-huh.
are you planning
Farmers
to sell
markets.
to full orders?
Nope, farmers market.
So just farmers market.
Yep.
Interesting.
That sounds fun. I envy you.
Yeah,
Right. That's how I thought.
In the South Carolina climate, no less.
it's going to be a lot of fun. And microgreens and things like that. It's kind of fun because when I was there in September, the farmers markets were still open. So you got to go out and you've got to look at your competition and say, okay, what are people growing? And I'd go up to a couple of coordinators. Well, I want to do some leafy greens and some microgreens and some cut flowers. And boy, this is perfect timing because our leafy green vendor had a heart attack and died. So
Silver linings.
yeah. True story. And it's like, we could use somebody that could really do that.
Way to make lemonade out of lemons, Dave.
My wife watches these episodes as well. Okay.
Oh.
And she's out there now and she's talking to folks about what we're going to do. And she says, there's so much excitement that we may have to open a stand on the farm itself for people to come.
Wow. Okay.
That much excitement to where, we would rather buy locally, within a 20-mile radius than going to the supermarket and getting the stuff that maybe came from Georgia.
Of course, not to poop on your party, but everybody's excited till they have to write a check.
Yeah.
And at which point the excitement quickly wanes.
Exactly.
So before you go spending a ton of money.
So this is my planning. I'm excited about it.
Good for you.
It's going to be fun.
Very fun.
So you're at the selection stage. You're figuring out what, not necessarily where, when, how.
Exactly.
I got to start with taking in steps, right?
And the same thing. I'm going to be ordering seed early as well.
Yeah.
So that we're ready to go. There's hundreds, maybe even thousands of varieties of dahlias.
Oh, yeah.
Sure.
Okay.
It's ridiculous.
God, what beautiful flowers. You got one of my absolute favorite flowers.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
stunningly beautiful. If you don't know, that's the Fibonacci sequence flowers
Yeah.
that are stunningly beautiful by themselves. Some of my screensavers on the computer are these dahlias. There are fascinating how beautiful. And like you said, there's hundreds of different
Right.
varieties, right? Shapes, colors, fuzzy, non-fuzzies.
And if I
Gorgeous.
had the land, I would then go into irises and hyacinths and a lot of the bulb type plants I used as a cut flower as well.
Nice.
I just don't have.
You're going to get to play with a
So-
lot of the acid loving plants that we don't play with here. The
Yes,
azaleas
yes.
And the pretty
and
colors.
The
Yes.
hydrangeas,
Hyd-
and
exact
yeah.
stuff
The
that you
blues.
Yeah,
Everything's
yeah.
just blue down
Yep.
there, I guess.
Yeah.
Yep. Gorgeous. You're going to start learning how to lime instead of put gypsum.
Yeah,
It'll be a little different.
It's going to be a little bit different, and I'm going to go as organic as I can.
Good for
so
you.
That's just, I think that's important. What's your? You've got all your gardening plots and what you're going to be doing.
We've backed off a little bit. I think we're looking forward to this. What we tend to do at my house, and there's just mom and I, so there's just a 2-person household. And because when we garden, we get such big crops, I find we don't have to can but every couple of years. So in my case, it's really cool. I only have to grow tomatoes and peppers about every 3rd season because we can enough and we freeze enough. People don't realize with the peppers, I grow up. Peppers are one of the, do you guys know about the Dirty Dozen and the Clean 15? Do you know what I'm talking about?
Not yet.
Nope.
Okay. So there is a list of plant material or
You're
list
learning
of,
something new today, guys.
list of stuff. The Clean 15 are the 15 food crops that are sprayed very little in commercial,
Oh, yeah.
in commercial production. For the one that comes to mind is onions. Onions do not stand up well at all to spray. So even conventionally grown onions have very little pesticide on it. So Clean 15 is a list of 15 things that you can buy, either organic or non-organic, and they're relatively clean. But there is another list called the Dirty Dozen, which are the worst offenders for pesticide residual. Berries are on the
Fruit
top of-
trees.
berries. So they
More
literally
than fruit.
harvest berries and float them in pesticide, not spray them, float berries in pesticide to not only kill what's on them, but to preserve the shelf life so that when you go buy a package of raspberries, it's literally swimming in pesticide. So Dirty Dozen, check these lists out. And the reason I say that,
Yeah.
because we tend to grow a lot of the stuff that's on the Dirty Dozen. If
Absolutely.
it's hard to get these products to be clean, right? Or you got to spend the extra money to buy organic, we tend to buy a lot. Berries are one of them. I planted a lot of berries at my house. I have tons of raspberries, blackberries, blueberries. Blueberries don't do very
How's
well
your
here.
relationship with your neighbors?
They love me when I'm giving them food. Asparagus is another thing I
Yeah.
planted plenty of. That's another
Nice.
weird crop that we're talking about gardening goals, but
Also Dirty Dozen?
no,
Oh, okay.
but it's super expensive and it's
Yeah.
so stupid easy to grow. So asparagus, if planted right, it takes 4 years to mature an asparagus plot.
Yep.
And then it will feed you for 100 years
Well,
Yeah.
if you treat it right. So the
Well.
4 years is to allow the roots to establish enough to come back. At the end of 4 years, I can harvest every spear that pops up for 16 weeks a season.
well,
So for 4 months, every spear that comes out of the ground, we get to eat. And then you back off, allow it to grow some bushes to reset the roots. And then next year I get to eat asparagus for 4 more months, right? So anyways, planning, right? If you plan ahead, and we planned ahead on this asparagus years worth, right? Much like you got to do with fruit trees, right? Gardening is something you can start planning the season of, right? We could start talking about our garden this year
Yeah.
right now.
Yeah.
Fruit trees takes a little longer because most of those are 2 and 3 years to establish. Berries are a little bit similar to that, although I lied because there are berries that come back and set fruit year number 1, right? So a lot of the old berries, you had to have second year
Right.
canes.
Right.
That's not the case anymore. You can buy these improved varieties. In fact, the old lady who taught me here in Jerome, she literally was out there with her mower at the end of the fall, mowing her raspberries down because they set fruit on first year canes. So she mows them down in the fall. They sprout new wood next year and give her fruit. So
Nice.
anyways, we tend to focus a lot on the Dirty Dozen. We grow every 3rd year, we grow a crap load of peppers. People don't realize peppers freeze ridiculously well. Like
Yeah.
I can take if you take it fresh out of the garden, clean it and freeze it, I can literally eat that raw or like in fresh cooked eggs, and you almost can't tell the difference between a couple year frozen pepper and something that's fresh.
Hmm.
If it goes in the freezer all the way. Things I didn't realize. Onions are another thing that freeze ridiculously good. So if you get a bumper crop of onions, we tend to chop them up and put them in freezer bags, and I have onions all year. Now the onions don't come out like fresh, right? You're not going to put it on a
Sure.
salad. You don't get that crunch, but putting it in a cooked food, a soup, a stew, these things are marvelous. And obviously you got to have a little freezer space, but for gardening here in Idaho, the reason I like it is because we have to put a big effort on this garden every second or third year, and then we can back off a little bit, right? We still have a small garden every year. I say 100 square feet ish, but on these big years, we might plant 1,000 square feet of garden to bump or to bulk up on the tomatoes.
And when are you making those determinations of how big your garden's going to be next year?
I feel like it's during the winter when we're eating through our canned goods, right? So as we're taking stuff out of the pantry, mom will go, "Oh man, this is our last 2 jars of salsa," or "Hey, we're on our last thing," and we
it's
start
only December.
That's exactly right. But for 2 people, we can buy, and that's when she started going, "Okay, next year we gotta pay attention."
Right.
Tomatoes in our climate take a little extra effort. The way that I do them is everything gets supported. Tomato cages are pretty wimpy in my opinion, right? They tend to fall over or bend or whatever, unless you buy the really good ones from Adam, who has amazing ones in the
I have like the heaviest duty.
You really do. Some of yours you could build a house out of some of yours.
I thought about it.
Really? But so that takes a little extra effort. The way that I actually do tomatoes is I set my garden up as a market garden. So every one of my beds is this exact same width and exact same length, right? In the effort to commercialize things to a small scale. So I'm able to just decide how many rows I plant a year. My rows are 30 inches wide by 40 feet long.
There you go.
Right. And so I can and the cool part to me is I know for sure I'll do a row of potatoes every year. I know for sure I'll do a half a row of onions every year, right? So
are you doing the same potatoes? Are you doing the same crops?
I have 7 years ago when we moved back to Idaho and I started the market garden, I ordered specialty potato seeds into Idaho, and I am still planting the same potatoes that I've had for 6 years.
Nice.
Although I have changed, I went and spent a little time with a fishing guide up in Wood River Valley. And I tend to save potatoes. The farmers call it single drop, right? Robin's eggs. So I tended to save the potatoes that were just about the right size, right?
Yeah.
So they don't need to be cut. You don't have to mix them with sulfur, right? You don't have to do anything to them. Well, this guide told me, he goes, "You're doing it all wrong." He goes, "You plant the biggest potatoes you grow." He goes, "And wait until you see your crop next year." So I didn't realize this, but big potatoes put big crops on. So he doesn't cut them. He doesn't sulfur them. He just takes bakers and buries them.
You're kidding.
No. And you ready for this? He buries them in wood chips.
Oh, wow.
Huh.
Now I tend to heal mine up with soil.
Crazy media,
right. You got to do it. You got to just build it. And wood chips is another magic thing. We'll talk about it. If you haven't figured out how to incorporate wood chips in your garden next year, that might be another episode, but plan on that. And I'll tell you why. You can get them free or cheap in many cases. I typically will go find the chipping trucks as they're running around my neighborhood, either trimming for power lines or just taking care of the neighbor's trees. They're always looking for someplace to dump. Right. So I'll literally, because it's that or they got to drive back to their shop. Right.
Exactly.
So I'll have a tendency as soon as I see it to go, "Hey buddy, if you want to get rid of this, bring it over." Wood chips are a magic garden tool, and it does a couple things. You know, this is from your education. Wood chips help improve your soil in a variety of ways, not the least of which is just keeping the moisture from evaporating off. It's just a cover, right? But it adds bionutrients. It adds a spot for the fungi to grow. It's like so important. The big bonus to me, I can work in my garden, whether it's raining, whether it's snowing, whether it doesn't matter the weather. I can go out in my garden. I don't have mud on my shoes. I don't bring a bunch of shit back in the house. I'm able to go walk and work in my garden no matter the weather because I got wood chips.
So you got wood chip paths between
wood
your
chip
beds.
paths, correct. I don't typically put wood on actual growing plants because if you get into the science of it, a decomposing wood is stealing the nutrients from your plant.
They just kind of debunked that. They kind of
Did they really?
a little bit. Yeah, I think they decided it wasn't really significant.
Interesting.
That obviously, there is some nitrogen consumption as it breaks down, but they were saying with the soil layer itself, it's kind of insubstantial the way it affects a growing plant.
And then in the new technology here over the last 5 to 7 years where they've been adding wood fiber into your soil mixes. Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
And that wood fiber is taking the place of perlite.
Right.
So you get that natural drainage.
Aeration.
That's, the source of carbon, the market gardeners
is what you're
are really
about.
looking towards. We're kind of understanding we really need to get carbon down into those lower soil layers, and that's kind of a food source that ends up down the chain of insects and worms down into the lowers.
Crazy important too. Really, that's just taking wood chips, lighting them on fire, and then taking what's left after that fire and incorporating it into your garden. Unbelievable. The like I said, one, it's a carbon fixation, right? So it's you're literally but you're right. The benefit to the soil is ridiculous. And literally it's basically a fire. The guys that I've seen making this will fill a 55-gallon barrel with wood chips, light it on fire, allow it to smolder slowly, like on a half covered. And when it's all cooled, that's what goes in their garden. right?
Just the straight ash. I mean, what
Well, it's
kind
not
of film
ash
is
at that
it? I
point. It
haven't
almost
seen-
looks like
it's-
charcoal. It's
yeah,
biochar.
Biochar.
Biochar is what they
Yep.
call it. It basically looks like small pieces of charcoal because
Okay.
it's basically the pits of the wood. But I
Yeah.
guess at that point it has absorbed, or it is basically all you're doing is making micro spaces for the nutrients to live, right? You're giving structure to the soil. You're giving a place for the microorganisms to live and grow, right?
Mhm.
The research on that stuff is ridiculous. And you think about it, it's just as simple as making a
Yeah.
fire and incorporating it in your garden.
There is a nursery in the United States, and I'm not sure of their name, but it's back east where they're actually doing tests right now on biochar for bedding plant production.
Oh, and so to do it in like a
For
greenhouse.
bigger
yeah.
picture.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's become it's I feel like gardening has a lot of fashionable shit. You know what I mean?
Sure,
Like
of
it
course.
comes in waves, and I feel like this is a big wave for like the organic back to earth people is just biochar. It's the carbon capture, which everybody
Right.
seems to be very enamored with right now. Is
Mhm.
how do I offset my carbon footprint, which is a little touchy feely to me. I got to be honest with you. You know,
Another topic for another
yeah,
day.
yeah, right.
Put
right.
that on the list of topics.
Yes, exactly. But all again, we say this because all of this comes to how do you plan for your garden next
Right.
year? None of this is hard. A lot of this is inexpensive, but you got to have a plan because you're
Yeah.
going to need to get the chips, and you're going to need to figure out where to put them, and you're going to. It's just an order of things.
So are you pretty anal on that? Are you putting down on paper, okay, I've got row 1 here is going to be my potatoes. Row 2 is going to be my corn. Row 3 is going to be
When I was market gardening, I 100% was that anal.
Mhm.
Not the least of which because I need multiple turns each row to make a
Yeah.
living as a
Right.
farmer.
Yeah.
Right. So it was less important on where I put it. How can I get it grown, harvested, gone, and get a second crop in that
Right,
row
comes
so I can
after.
make money? Right. Much more anal as the market gardener, not the least of which because I was trying to utilize every square foot of space.
But you were taking notes and
Yeah.
you had
Oh,
it,
100%.
and you were
Yes,
writing
sir.
it down.
Yes,
and you
sir.
had
Interesting about the notes, because I heard you mention it
Yeah.
last time. Notes are a wonderful thing. I find from my own personal, you really only do it for a couple of seasons because after a couple of seasons, you've sort of settled into what you. Now,
Yeah.
I'm not anal like that, but I do know people that make those notes and they're able to go back and reread what worked last year, what didn't work. You know, oh shit, start peppers a month sooner,
right.
or buy them from Moss greenhouses. Right, there's the two options.
Right.
Right. I was much more anal when it was a business type thing.
Sure.
Much less when it's family. Right. It's just a couple of us. If I fail someplace, who cares? I also know where to go buy plants.
Yeah.
So at that point in the season, if I've screwed something up, if my seeds didn't take, if I've run out of room, I can come to Moss greenhouses. And
So if your
supplement.
wife took the initiative to go out and make a crop somewhere, it was like, holy crap, you didn't follow my mental
Well,
notes here, you know. It's
I'll tell you a story about that. So my wife is not a grower, or she never has been. Now, after 30 years of being with me, she has morphed into a grower, right? And her friends really wanted to get involved in the garden. And I let them, not the least of which, because I was here working my guts out, right? But it's such good exercise for those ladies just to get out there and work on it. But I find myself giving shitty directions because I'm so used to this. So, perfect example, they went to all the trouble to plant potatoes. Well, at the time when it came to hill those up, my directions were them, go bury the potatoes. And that's exactly what they did. Instead of hilling them up and leaving a couple leaves at the top, I showed up and there wasn't a single potato plant visible. I went, I think I screwed the pooch there. And she goes, didn't you tell me to bury the potatoes? And I went, that's exactly what I told you to do. You know, in my tiny brain, I knew what I meant, right?
Yeah.
Go hill them up, leave me. No, those rookie girls didn't know. So I find myself have to be very careful with the directions to the rookies.
yeah.
Just because we know, you know, we've been doing it for so many years and we
Right,
kind of know.
right.
They did not. And I gave them poor. Now, the interesting thing about that took 2 years. I had a marvelous potato crop the following year. Basically, she buried everything there. Basically, everything died, but the tubers stayed in the ground.
Right,
The
and they
next
came-
season, I had a
came back
bumper
up.
crop of potatoes.
You didn't pull them?
Absolutely not.
Nice.
Absolutely not. I wasn't even sure they were alive, to tell you.
Yeah.
I kept waiting for the plants to come out of the top. Never did.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, I screwed that up. Next season, those tubers that were there popped up. I had a bumper crop.
They
So
liked their extra winter.
100% they did. They liked not being disturbed. So I told the wife,
Yeah.
says, even though I screwed this up, it took 2 seasons. We had great potatoes.
So Adam's coming to us in retail. He's worked with us as a grower, and then he went off and did his own landscaping
Got a
business
bunch
and
of
things.
education.
So, coming into retail. So now you're going from that where you were kind of on your own to where you're working with the public.
Mhm.
How does this now affect what you're going to do for your 2024 planning for your own personal garden?
My personal garden? Honestly, this year I'm going to take the lazy approach. I'm not doing seeds. I'm doing
Get it here.
I'm doing
Mhm.
plugs and plants. Because also I'm a single person household, so I don't need that much food to feed
Right.
my little tiny self. I need 2 tomato plants for my whole year, a cherry and a beef,
Right.
like,
Right.
so and we did the market gardening too, I think you're talking about the John Martin book or whatever.
A whole bunch of them. But
Yeah.
yes,
The 30-inch beds,
Yes.
all the
Yeah.
implements. I
Yes.
mean, that's what we were doing the past few years. And it is so labor intensive.
It is.
And
No doubt.
it is incredibly hard to make money that way. And
Only because you can't sell fat ass Americans vegetables. That's the only reason. Like they would buy
say it.
they would buy all the jam I made. They'd buy all the bread. They'd buy all the cupcakes. What's this kale? What's
Yeah.
this lettuce?
We are in a little microcosm here. Okay. So we've got our Jerome Farmers Market. Okay.
Mhm.
And Twin Falls isn't much different. And I'm not trying to be
And Hagerman.
negative or anything like that. Right. There's just not a whole lot of varietal. You can have that in a smaller market concept. People are going to pick and choose and go out. Okay. So Kathy, Bartholomew, does
Who
pretty
runs
good
our
with-
Jerome
right.
Farmers Market?
She does a pretty good job with a lot of the produce and things that
Mhm.
she will bring.
Mhm.
Okay. But it's hard to say, okay, you've got some tomatoes there that look great, but you're not specializing in tomatoes. And
You know what drove me crazy is so when I did the market garden, I did it for 4 years, right? I did 3 different farmers markets a week, had 10 different wholesales and 20 different families that buy my vegetables. Okay. I grew 100 different vegetables for that year, which is interesting because in my life, I don't think I've eaten 100 different vegetables, right? So that was, now to be fair, that was, 12 different tomatoes and
Yeah.
10 different lettuces, but it was 100
Right.
vegetables, right? When I go to a farmer's market, I am always looking for the weird shit. Like, what is that crazy
Yeah.
looking tomato? Give me
Yeah.
one of them.
Yeah.
What's this purple thing? Never.
Yeah.
I couldn't get rid of these things to these people.
Yeah.
What I find in our area, and for at least for farmers markets, anybody that wants to grow vegetables grows them themselves.
We're very
They have a
Yeah,
garden.
we have an independent
We
agricultural
yes,
mindset
right.
here of like a do it yourself.
Well, we have good soil. Most places have access to
Yeah.
inexpensive water, and most people have a little land around here. I say even city folks.
And this is why I bring it up. We are a microcosm of the entire group. You go to Boise, where you don't have
It's
a lot
urban.
of people that have
Yeah.
the yards.
Yeah.
It's apartment
a little
living
more
or condo.
residential. Mm-hmm.
Go to the Boise market.
You can sell black tomatoes there.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
in my time in a market, I
Not here.
didn't grow a single red tomato because I said,
Why would you?
You can go to Walmart and
That's
buy
right.
organic
Yeah,
red
that's right.
tomatoes. You can go to, I said, why would I compete? So I grew everything but red. I grew black, green,
Yep.
orange,
Same.
stripe.
Set
Couldn't get
yourself
rid of them,
apart.
Adam.
No
They
one
wouldn't
wanted
buy
it.
it from
Well,
me.
And so all your
Yeah.
salsa's rainbow, right?
Oh,
You got
tomato salad, man, with an orange and a red and a pink. It's stunning. Couldn't get rid of them.
yeah.
They
Same-
just looked at me like I was
met
crazy.
the same thing. People around here oddly wanted what they saw at the grocery
Yes.
store.
Yeah.
They wanted green broccoli. They wanted
But
red
it's all about
tomatoes.
it is a perception, but it's also trying to have people learn. Okay.
Yes.
That's true.
Having here, try this, that's
Yep.
part of, that's not bad. Oh, and I can only get them from you,
Yeah.
and that's the,
One of the best sellers for me was fascinating because it was an early season and I was thinning. So I was thinning Chinese cabbage, right? I'm thinning beets, right?
Yep.
And I got a baby beet is an amazing nutritious thing that put in everything I'm talking about is made. I ended up making stir fry packages. So I'd put in peppers, I'd put in cilantro, I'd put in
Yeah.
baby beets, I'd put in some mesclun, all this stuff. And I put in a recipe card right in it and basically gave them all you had to do is fry up some protein.
Yep.
Put this in with some soy sauce and some teriyaki, and I got you a stir fry.
Yeah.
I sold that all day
Yeah.
long because we took the mystery away from
Right,
it. Right.
yeah.
It was
and you made it different. You can't, it's not something you can find
true.
in the market, so
Right.
it's,
Well,
For sure.
going back, okay, full disclosure, my focus this year is completely ornamental.
Good for you.
I've been growing almost exclusively with kind of this survivalist mentality of like feed myself off the land,
Like it.
right? We all take a lot of pride in that.
Mm-hmm.
But this year I'm just going full flowers.
Good for you.
so let's
Yeah.
talk about that, because a lot of the times when people are talking about gardens, they're vegetable gardens.
Yes.
And for folks my age and older, where they had the victory gardens, these weren't flower gardens. These were vegetable gardens to
Right,
help
yeah.
feed your family.
Right. It was
okay?
supposed to support
So
the war effort back. in
How
the
do you bring that color in, that beauty in that same concept of having this and that in the planning? So you're doing the ornamentals, which is
Mhm.
great. What's been your planning process though to figure that out?
We're in
very
the middle
little.
of it. We're in the
Honestly, I just look towards soil amendment, mulch kind of things. Flowers is just plug and play. You know,
Especially here, right?
you work with your shade and your sun and your water. You know, I've got my dry spots, so I know this is xeric or close to. You know, I'm gonna go in with salvia, Russian sage, all these things.
Nice.
But yeah, mine's just really soil amendment. Planning is done that day.
There you go. But you're able to do that.
I mean, not planning, but the design. You know, I just wing it.
Well, and you're able to do that because you're going to walk in this beautiful retail situation. You're going to look on these tables and decide what you want to, and then you're going to make your mind up, right? Is that kind of what you're thinking?
Yeah, I'm
Good
going to
for
take
you.
my little buffet of whatever I saw that day.
Whatever makes you happy today, or
throw it
whatever
in.
looks exciting.
So are you sticking only to what Moss Greenhouses is offering, or are you going to order some catalog stuff and try some different things? Or
Again, lazy approach. Moss sells so much. We sell so much beautiful stuff. I don't see any need to go all out. The only thing we're lacking is bulbs, and that is another big element of my planning. Like I have all my bulbs.
here's the
places
problem that we have
marked
with
and-
bulbs, in my opinion.
Yeah, go ahead.
So we've got tulips, and I love tulips. Okay, when do they bloom?
Way
In
before
April,
Yeah.
when the windstorms are coming through.
Or
so
March.
you get a nice, beautiful flower, right? Next day you've got the windstorm. It's like, where the hell did that
Yeah.
go?
Yeah.
Well, I call them 5-minute flowers because they look good for 5 minutes, and tomorrow they're grass.
Yeah.
Right. So they serve a purpose, no doubt about
Yeah.
it.
I don't know, that excitement in the spring though.
Well,
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
to be fair,
Absolutely.
when they're well done, when you have a yard full of bulbs, it's a different experience. A couple of bulbs in the middle of an annual bed doesn't do much for me. But when you see someone that's committed, and there's iris and there's lilies and there's a lot of different colors and
Yep.
textures with
Yep.
bulbs. If you spin hyacinths, right, you can get spring bloom and middle of
Yeah.
summer bloom, right?
Yeah.
So if you commit to that,
Yeah.
it can be a really good look. I feel like most people tend to throw that in
You
as
know,
an afterthought, and it doesn't do much for me.
the tulips and irises are pretty big here. We
Right?
don't do a lot of decorative type bulbs, whereas gladiolas are
Definitely.
probably one of my favorites.
Oh yeah.
You know,
Now, and not a
it's-
summer
It
bloomer
is a
too,
summer
right? It's
bloomer,
a little later in
absolutely,
the
and
year.
it's a great cut flower. You know,
Yeah.
so it's
The best, really. If
Yeah.
you ask me,
Yeah.
I love them.
gorgeous and they hold up. You know what I always tell people, especially, and it's perfect timing. Everybody who's planting a garden this year, cut it to half. I'm telling you right now. Most people overplant.
Yep.
Perfect example. You said you're a single guy. 2 tomatoes is 1 tomato too many.
Yeah.
I'm being honest.
I know.
But
I
to be
only want my
No,
selection.
no. And listen, 1 cherry and 1 beef, I get it. But everybody goes, I'm going to plant 12 tomatoes. I'm going,
Right.
great. That's 11 too goddamn many.
Yeah.
So here's the way to do it. Reduce your planting by half. And I'll tell you why. You're going to have a better season for it. And I'll explain it in a second. But cut your planting on your edibles in half. And then fill whatever that other space is with something from Adam. Go get some flowers. Go get some bulbs. Well, actually, bulbs, you've already missed the window on that. But you can still have that garden space. You can still do it. The reason I say cut it in half, most people get overly excited about their garden and they plant way too big of a space. And then as soon as the maintenance the maintenance level ratchets up,
It
they lose
slacks.
all motivation because
Yep.
you can't stay caught up.
Right.
And nothing is more demoralizing than
Yep.
spending all winter planning, spending all spring planning, and then you giving up in the 1st of May because the weeds have kicked your ass.
and this is a good pointer.
That is really
So
good
when you're
point.
when you're going through your planning stages,
Right.
take a look at that and space it out. Give yourself that, if you've never done this, right? Space it out a little bit and then take your notes and, okay, I could have used more of that.
Right. Well,
You
the
know,
other
and
thing I'd say is don't plant stuff nobody likes. And Dave was talking about kale. My line with kale is easy to grow, impossible to get rid of.
Right.
You can't even give that shit away. No one wants it, right? You could grow it all. I grew 4 different kinds of kale. The only people that bought it were the professional chefs. No, I could get no
Yep.
regular people
I
to
sold
grow.
a surprising amount of kale in Twin Falls.
Did you
I
really?
was impressed with my kale sales.
Man,
That's about
I
it.
could not get rid of it. So, but the reason
But
I
I
say
had
that-
them like in water, you know, in like vases. They looked pretty.
Yeah,
But
Right?
Adam, when
it
I was
a
doing
thing.
kale
I
a
love
couple
kale,
years
though.
ago, I would
You
bring
love kale.
I brought
Weirdo.
I brought in some kale, right? And I couldn't give it away here
Couldn't
even,
give
you
it
know.
away.
So guys, it's fresh. Yeah, it was like, crickets.
Yeah.
nobody wants it.
No, I sold wilted kale even. I'm not proud, but
So, one of the girls at the bar, she would make kale chips. She would
Yep.
dry them out and put some salt and some like teriyaki.
Right.
That's in fact, the lady at the Yellow Brick Cafe is the first person I ever saw that had kale in a menu item that tasted good.
Yeah.
And I told her she would become a multimillionaire because she was the first person I ever met that made kale taste good.
yeah. I think people just don't realize that you have to bruise it.
Okay.
Yeah,
Interesting.
you're
You
supposed
don't
to,
eat that
yeah.
fresh. You
Right.
bruise it. I mean, you
Interesting.
take it in your hands after I chop it. That's what I do, and you just sit there and you
Mhm.
Beat it.
to your full strength. Yeah, and you
Yep.
crunch it, and then it turns bright, vibrant, deep green, and that's when it's sweet. It loses that bitter.
Ooh, that's interesting. I might
It's
have
just a
tried that.
simple
Yeah.
thing. No one really
But see, this is
knows.
probably the difference between normal and a good chef or somebody that
Maybe.
knows
But
one little step. Maybe
Yeah.
like, I could not get rid of that stuff. I literally grew so much and couldn't do eggplant. I heard Jennifer complain about eggplant.
oh,
I
God.
At one point I said I was the world's third largest supplier of eggplant behind only chili because I had like 2 rows of eggplant. Couldn't get rid of it.
Yeah,
I grew
bet.
4 or 5 different kinds of eggplant. Eggplant's amazing. I
Yeah.
love fresh tomatoes and eggplant. They go in every recipe you can put tomatoes in. You could put eggplant in, and it's wonderful. Couldn't get rid of it. Just
Well-
people don't know how to. It was new. It was different, and man, do they not
Yeah.
respond to new and different unless you help them. Like you said, show them a
Yeah.
recipe card, show
Yeah.
them a recipe, something. But
Feed them some bruised kale.
Yeah.
you're making me want to brew some
Yeah.
kale.
All right, before we go, I got to plug this book because it's amazing. And for garden planning, it is invaluable. It's Square Foot Gardening by Mel Bartholomew. This is an out of date edition. I think this one was in the 80s.
Yeah.
But he has
I was around when
amazing-
that was popular.
Yeah, he has amazing calendars in the back. I think a lot of the book is kind of overdone, but in the back, there's germination temperatures charts, there's spacing charts, there's timing charts. You, like you were saying, you just pick your frost date
Right.
and you backtrack, and he's got it all there. For garden planning, I think it's invaluable. He's got
Awesome.
you starting 12 weeks before
where
the
can you
last
find
frost
that?
date. Anywhere.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Amazon's got
None
it.
of you
Yeah.
shop
It's a
at Barnes
great
and
book.
Noble anymore. You all shop on Amazon, so just go there.
So there you go. So as we close up, what's a takeaway today for, as you can tell, we're excited about
Yeah,
2024
we get a
coming
little
up. So
carried
what's a
away.
takeaway for you, Adam?
Start planning in
Mhm.
December. I mean, the off season in retail, I've been planning since October. That's take advantage of our Idaho seasonal, or wherever you're at, our seasonal flux, and be prepared for spring so it doesn't catch you off guard.
Absolutely.
And what do you think, PJ?
I'd say the same thing. It is absolutely not too soon to be planning your garden. It takes a little while. I'm cheap, so I'm always looking for sales and deals. And so if you know what you need, you don't have to run out and buy it today. You can just kind of keep your eyes open for the deals or the specials, whether you're looking at heat mats for seedlings or
Right.
grow lights. Grow lights take home. They used to be so expensive. They're like $5 goddamn now.
I know.
Like,
Yeah.
you can get a grow light for nothing. So the little things that used to be hard for us to do as home gardeners are getting inexpensive and easy. And start planning. You really got to have a plan, because an unplanned garden is not necessarily what you're looking for.
Absolutely. And I would say the same thing. Plan. If you're going to buy something online, buy it now because it may not be there.
Sure.
Okay. And then we want you all to come into Moss Gardens, Moss Greenhouses to buy the plants. And if there's something that we're not growing, let us know.
Well, not just
So-
buy, but the amount of knowledge in retail is
Absolutely.
ridiculous. Questions. Almost every single person in there on Adam's team can help answer questions. Almost every single person in that building has had a garden, some cases for decades.
Yeah.
You know what I
Yep.
mean? So these people are a wealth of knowledge. What did you screw up? What are you working on? What are you really excited about? These people can help you. And we want to sell you some flowers and
Yep.
some plants.
So your homework, as Jennifer would say, go ahead and do your research. Go ahead and buy what you need to buy, and then have fun getting ready for the season, because it's going to be a blast. We're working really hard here at the greenhouse to bring you some fabulous introductions and bedding plants and perennials that we have to offer. So we appreciate everybody listening. We encourage you to live life in full color, because black and white is boring. You can find us on all of the streaming platforms. We appreciate you listening. See you later.
Cheers.